it's slow, but. Okay, good to go.
Good. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the public hearing on the Committee of Transportation. Welcome. Glad you could be with us today. The meeting will be live streamed on our committee's YouTube channel, and everyone that will be participating via Zoom can be seen and heard if the mic is unmuted. We will introduce ourselves and get started today. We do have one public hearing, so we look forward to that for sure. But before we do that, we'll do our introductions, and we'll start with way up in Naples, Representative Seabrook. Good afternoon.
Morning, Mr. Chairman. I'm Representative Rich Zebra, District 68, Naples, Sebago, Baldwin, Cornish, and Parsonsfield. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. By the way, all those who are listening, we have some members that are working today, such as Representative O'Connell, putting electricity back in homes. So if they're not here, there's a good reason for it. So we just want you to be aware of that. Representative Tom Martin, I think Tom is also in the middle of the storm someplace. Representative Bruce White, good afternoon.
Thank you, Senator Diamond. Representative Bruce White from Waterville, District 109, and sitting here very comfortably on my porch with my pet Benny.
Wow,
So thank
you
you.
both are looking well. Representative Mark Bryant from Wyndham. Good afternoon, Mark.
Thank you, Senator. I'm Mark Bryan. I represent House District 24, part of the town of Wyndham. Welcome. Good to be here.
Thank you, sir. Representative Mike Perkins. Good afternoon, Representative Perkins.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mike Perkins, represent District number 77, Oakland and Sydney.
Thank you, sir. Representative Wayne Perry. Good afternoon.
Good
Representative.
afternoon, everyone. My name is Wayne Perry. I represent House District 10, which covers Arundel, Dayton, and most of Lyman.
Thank you, sir. Representative Lynn Williams.
Good afternoon. I am Representative Lynn Williams. I represent District 135, which includes Bar Harbor, Mount Desert, Lemoyne, and the Cranberry Isles.
Thank you very, very much. Representative Dustin White, up in Aroostook. I'm not sure where Representative White is, but I suspect he will be with us if he possibly can. Senator Ben Chipman, good afternoon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm Senator Ben Chipman. I represent the fine residents of the city of Portland in District 27.
Thank you, sir. Senator Brad Farron, good afternoon, Senator Farron.
Good afternoon, sir. Always a pleasure when you are chairing a committee to be part of the process. My name is Brad Farron. I live in Norwich Walk and represent the majority of Somerset County in Senate District 3.
Thank you very, very much. And House Chair, Representative Danny Martin from way up there in Sinclair.
Yep, there in Sinclair. Good afternoon, folks. Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Danny Martin. I represent House 150, located in northern Aroostook County.
Thank you, sir. And I'm Bill Diamond, represent Senate District 26, live in Wyndham. And again, we're glad you can be with us. Our analysts for this committee are Sam Prower and Julia McDonald. And Darlene Semino is the technician magician that keeps us hooked up, even though when it's almost impossible to do that. Be sure to understand that this legislature's audio video broadcast system is in play here, and we will begin our first, before we begin, House Chair Martin, anything you'd like to add?
No, we're ready to rock and roll, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. All right, we'll start with our first bill, which is LD 1749. An act to change the requirements for the sales of used catalytic converters, presented by Senator Dill of Penobscot. And it's always a pleasure to have Senator Dill come out of the bowels of the committees he's on and join the Committee on Transportation. So nice to have him here. Senator Dill.
Now he's still coming through the portal.
Oh, is he? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
he missed that.
Well, I can see his name, but we can't see his picture. There he is.
Oh, Senator Dill, you missed the intro, but I was just saying how nice it is to have you here.
Well, actually, I heard every word you said. Good,
Oh, you
bad,
did?
and indifferent. So, yeah.
Anyway, welcome, Senator Dill. Glad you can be with us to present this bill.
Thank you. Senator Diamond, Representative Martin, and honorable members of the Joint Standing Committee on Transportation As noted, I am Senator Jim Dill, and I represent Senate District Number 5, which is the northern part of Penobscot County. I'm here today to introduce 1749, an act to change the requirement for sales of used catalytic converters. This bill is designed to address an issue that most of you are probably aware, which is the theft of catalytic converters from people's cars and trucks. Catalytic converter is a component of the vehicle's exhaust system. Simply put, it helps convert toxic pollutants that come from an engine into less toxic pollutants before they come out of the tailpipe. These components can be very expensive, especially for trucks, ranging from hundreds to thousands of dollars for replacement. So what's the issue? Thieves are literally crawling under vehicles and cutting out the catalytic converter from the rest of the exhaust system, for which they can sell for several $100s. This type of criminal activity is more common than you may initially think, and that's especially true up here in Penobscot County, maybe from where you are too. But as an example, there have been several headlines over the past few months. In August of 2021, it said over 1,000 catalytic converters were recovered during theft investigation. October of 2021, 2 arrested in Fairfield, catalytic converter theft, police say. December of 2021, 2 arrested in catalytic converter theft last Friday, and again, December 2021, catalytic converter thefts continue despite law to prevent them, costing Mainers millions. On a personal note, over Labor Day weekend last year, the University of Maine Cooperative Extension Lab here where I work had 3 catalytic converters stolen off in 3 of our trucks. And to get those replaced, they were all well over $1,000 to replace each one of those. So it's kind of something that's near and dear to my heart here. It's clear that this is a problem and we need to address this here in legislature. Now that the current law requires someone to show identification and sign a sworn statement that the part is not stolen really isn't working to everybody's satisfaction. I realized that there was an advisory committee, a work group that was put together from last year to look at this. And but this will give you another vehicle if, I don't know if the bill was a carryover or if it allows you to report out a bill, but I figure this bill will give you something to use as a vehicle to move forward. And what it would do, it would require junkyards, auto parts recyclers, and scrap metal processors to collect additional information before they can purchase a catalytic converter. This includes the date of the purchase, seller's name and address, a form of picture ID, and the vehicle identification number from which the catalytic converter came. Purchasers will be required to maintain these records and have them available for inspection by law enforcement. As a matter of fact, last fall, I had seen an advertisement down in the coastal area, Waldo County, just advertising $400 for catalytic converters. Just bring them to, this local recycling place. So they even advertise to get these things. So by keeping better records of who is selling these parts and the vehicle from which they came, we should be able to significantly cut down, or hopefully cut down, on the thefts here in Maine. Law enforcement will be better able to track the crimes that do occur, and thieves will have much less of a market here in state. Thank you for your time, and I would welcome any questions that you have.
Thank you, Senator Dill, for that. You're right. We did the bill that we used, Senator Timberlake's bill, was a carryover. In fact, those two, your bill and his, amend pretty much the same section of the law. So it's also very helpful to have this bill so that we can see that this is not a certain region of the state. I think it's obviously a full region. So we appreciate that. Are there questions of Senator Dill? Seeing none, yes, Representative Wayne Perry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator Dill, what are your thoughts on maybe enhancing the penalties for the people that steal these or purchase these? Information's one thing, but if you scare them to death, that might be a better stick.
I think that's a great way to go, Representative Perry. I thought of putting that in this bill, but I thought that I would leave that either to committee or figuring if there's a penalty, it might have to end up going to another committee. But I just thought if we at least start down the road of collecting more information, That will be up to the committee if they want to put more penalties on here, but I think it's a great idea. Because I can tell you, if you haven't lost a catalytic converter, it's a real pain if you have.
Well, and I just think that, it's seems to be too easy for the transfer, keeping them, not keeping them, that you make it really hard for anybody that purchases it too. Not just the person stealing it.
Right.
The person stealing it needs a customer. And so they're just as liable, in my opinion.
Sure. Thank you.
And on that note, Representative Perry, when we have our work session, we can bring those options to the committee as well, of course. Representative Danny Martin.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to remind Senator Dill that immediately following this public hearing, we do have a presentation from the Catalytic Converter Working Group report this afternoon. So,
Great. Thank you.
Thank you for that. That's helpful. Also, Senator Dill, that Senator Timberlake's bill was 796 if you want to review it at any point. So other questions of Senator Dill? Seeing none. Thank you very much, sir. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Double checking, making sure that Representative Landry is not with us. I don't see him. We'll now go to William Bell, Maine Auto Recyclers. Good afternoon, Mr. Bell.
Good afternoon, Sarah Diamond, Representative Martin, and members of the committee. My name is William Bell. I'm the Executive Director of the Maine Auto Recyclers, and we support LD 1749. We thank Senator Dill. This is, as committee is well aware, only one part of the solution which needs to be brought about to deal with what for us is a very serious problem. Our members have catalytic converters stolen from their yards, or they will purchase a vehicle, perhaps at an auction, and then find out that when it's delivered, that in the meantime, the catalytic converter has been removed. And we look forward to watching the presentation from the working group following this hearing, where we and our national organization has been part of, the member has been part of, so I'll be very brief. By the way, the advertisement to which Senator Dill referred in a Waldo County newspaper, if I am correct, that advertisement based on the omnibus bill, where you revised a sentence of it last year, simply advertising for a part is now a crime unless you are registered. And so, and this is important because the people who are trafficking are advertising on Facebook and other social media, and they are the people who are buying stolen converters. And I urge the committee to keep that in their focus. This is important to us. We realize that it's going to require some extra work on our report, on our part, if the committee goes along with the task force recommendations on engraving every catalytic converter which they remove. The laboratory experiment conducted by the Secretary of State by Bureau of Motor Vehicles said, well, this takes about 1.5 minutes. That's under lab conditions. Assuming it takes 3 minutes, one of our members, who happens to be president of our association, handles over 100 cars a week in his recycling. He removes the converters at 3 minutes per converter. That's 5 or 6 hours of work for an employee, perhaps close to a full day every week. And we can accept this as long as the bill is made to be truly effective for law enforcement, which means that this committee hopefully will provide the funding, working with appropriations, to meet the requests forthcoming for the necessary staff at Bureau of Motor Vehicles. Otherwise, this whole approach is going to be one of regulating the businesses with additional regulation, which are already licensed, and not getting to the heart of the matter, which is catching the thieves themselves. And we look forward to supporting the committee in that work in accordance with this bill and the recommendations coming out of the task force. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you, Mr. Bell. Are there questions from the committee of Mr. Bell? Seeing none, thank you, sir, very much. There are others who would testify as proponents, and the next one I have is Andreas Heiss. Did I do that correctly, Andreas?
It's Andreas, but close enough, Senator. My name is Andreas Heiss. I'm the Northeast Government Affairs Manager for LKQ Corporation. Chairman Diamond, Martin, members of the committee, thank you so much for allowing me to testify today in support of LD 749. I'm not going to, I'll make this very brief as we are members of the association that just spoke. And I reiterate his points that he just made regarding why we like this bill, but also why this bill may not be as complete as the work group that we did do. Just to put it in perspective, we operate in almost every state. We recycled over almost 1 million cars last year in the United States, making us the largest single auto recycler in the country. We do not buy catalytic converters from anyone, but we do process a lot of them. Even though we don't sell them in the state of Maine, we do have facilities in Maine where we do remove them from the cars. So we worked in the work group over the fall. We found it very helpful. But I'd like to reiterate what Bill had just previously said. Our Gorham facility also processes probably 100 a week. I mean, that was pre-COVID, but it's very time consuming to actually have to etch the VIN onto a catalytic converter. There's a lot of room for error. I mean, these are 17 digits. I believe we did come up with workable solutions as far as using a permanent identification number on there with a certain permanent pen that could be used in conjunction with a log, linking it, our stock number to the actual vehicle it came from. But I think this is all going in the right direction, and I appreciate this bill as well as the bill that we'd worked on over the summer, and I look forward to working with the committee in the future going forward.
Thank you, sir, very much. We appreciate your testimony. Are there questions from the committee, Mr. Heiss? Seeing none, again, thank you for your work on this. We certainly appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Next, speaking as a proponent, we have Elizabeth Frazier. Ms. Frazier, welcome. Good afternoon. Glad you be with us.
Good morning. Thank you. Good afternoon. Goodness. Thank you so much for having me.
Sure.
Chairman Diamond and Chairman Martin and members of the Transportation Committee, thanks again for having me. My name is Elizabeth Frazier. I'm an attorney at Pure Satwood in Portland, but I'm before you this afternoon on behalf of the Alliance for Automotive Innovation. If you're not familiar, and I think most of you probably are by now, but just generally, they are a trade association that represents, I think it's 99% of the world's light duty auto manufacturers. So pretty much everybody that you can think of is a member of the auto innovators, but they also have a very broad membership that includes, a lot of companies that are doing work in innovative technology solutions for autonomous vehicles and different things of that nature. So very broad perspective on the issues. I won't take up too much of your time because I am in support of this bill. They are in support of this bill. I think you've heard a lot of the good reasons already. Would just say that we do think that this is the right approach in terms of, trying to make sure that the information is collected at that point of exchange, and that I'll say the seller of the catalytic converter, the person who is trying to sell it to the recycler, they're properly identified and that records are maintained. We think this is a good and right approach. We'll be looking at the information that comes out of the working group too, but certainly we think this takes it in the right direction, and we'll be happy to help in any way we can with resources or information. But we recognize there is a problem, and we think this is a good way to address the issue. So thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions if I can answer them. If I can't answer them, I'll take them back and bring them for the work session.
Thank you very much, Ms. Frazier. Appreciate that. Are there questions from the committee? See none. Thank you again. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Have a good afternoon.
Same to you. That completes my proponent list. Did I miss anybody? Anybody else would like to speak as a proponent? Seeing none, we'll now go to the opponents. Are there those who would speak as opponents to this legislation? Seeing none, are there those who would speak neither for nor against? And I have Madam Secretary of State, Shanna Bellows. Are you with us, Madam Secretary? There you are. Good afternoon and welcome.
Thank you, Senator Diamond, Representative Martin, distinguished members of the Transportation Committee. I'm going to reserve the majority of my remarks for the presentation of the task force recommendations. I just want to applaud Senator Dill for recognizing the seriousness of the problem and outlining it so eloquently in his testimony. At the Bureau of Motor Vehicles, we share his concerns and the concerns of Senator Timberlake and so many more. This is a very serious problem requiring a comprehensive solution.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Are there questions of Secretary Bellows at the moment? Seeing none, thank you again for being with us, and we look forward to having you join us in the presentation. Others would speak neither for nor against. I have a Sandy Blaylock. Is Blaylock here? Do not see her anywhere. So that would complete our testimony on this legislation, and we will now close the public hearing on LD 1749.
Yes, Senator Diamond.
Yes.
I have on my list Bruce Garrity. I'm not sure if he's available.
He wasn't listed as a speaker, just written testimony.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
But Sandy was here.
I am here.
There she is.
Oh, is she here?
I was here, and just right after you said that, I got a link that popped up on my screen, so I apologize.
Okay, well, we're very flexible on this committee.
Well, thank you.
We're going to invite you to speak, to give us your testimony, which I believe is neither for nor against. Is that correct?
Yes, I'm more of a proponent than an opponent, so I just put that in there just to kind of bring up the thing. So, Mr. Chairman and Transportation Committee members, thank you for the opportunity to speak to all of you today. My name is Sandy Blaylock. I'm the Executive Director of the Automotive Recyclers Association. We represent over 4,500 professional automotive recyclers, including many members in Maine. We've been highly engaged as an association with law enforcement and several other strategic partners over the last year on the issue of these catalytic converter theft that's plaguing many communities nationwide. In fact, we tracked and worked on 49 such bills in 2021. We also were part of the stakeholder group that worked on the LD 796 catalytic converter theft working group, and hope that you will learn and potentially consider some of the information that you will be presented from that working group. I think that LD 1749 could be effective, but I have some concerns that they unfairly target auto recyclers who primary business model, as both Andreas and Bill told you, are not in the business of buying detached catalytic converters for the most part. They buy complete vehicles for the purpose of dismantling them to recover reusable original equipment auto parts for resale. Catalytic converters are only one of the parts they remove for resale, but they are being sold into the PGM, which is the precious metals recovery system. They themselves, as Bill and Andreas said, have fallen victim to the theft of catalytic converters from the vehicles they own. I think I would like to see some wording that would address our concerns and what is really happening in the world of catalytic converter theft. It's generally not licensed businesses such as the professional auto recyclers that are involved in promoting this catalytic converters, nor are they buying the stolen materials. The language that I would suggest is that in the paragraph where you have the owner or operator of the businesses, I would suggest that we close a few loopholes and add any person, including the owner operator of a junkyard or automobile recycling business, or any other entity involved in acquiring detached catalytic converters, shall record the following information before completing the purchase of the catalytic converter. That'll close a few loopholes so that the people that are out there that do not identify as auto recyclers or scrap metal recyclers can be taken to task in these purchases of catalytic converters. Because the true problem is it's the unlicensed and unregulated buyers that don't identify themselves like that. And I think those are the ones that we need to track down and somehow put to task with this particular legislation. Where we as an industry don't believe that we're the cause of the increase of these thefts, and hope that we can work together with the state of Maine and find a compromise and something that's going to be effective for everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Blaylock, for your testimony. Are there questions from the committee? Thank you very much. We definitely make sure that's all included. That then completes our public hearing on this bill. And so we will, as we say, we'll bring it to a close, and we thank you.
No, not yet. Bruce Charity's out there waiting to testify. Anyone signed up? I'm sorry.
No problem. No problem.
It's been that
Listen,
kind of day.
it's been that kind of day, and we just roll with the punches here. Mr. Garrity, welcome. Join us.
Maybe he had his hand up, so.
Mr. Garrity, love to have you join us. Maybe we'll give you another a few seconds.
There we go.
Oh, there he is.
There he is.
I have no idea why that was such a challenge, other than that I'm generally technologically challenged.
Well, it's worth the wait, I'm sure.
Well, I don't know about that, but I'll be very brief. Members of the committee, my name is Bruce Garrity. I'm here on behalf of the American Property Casualty Insurance Association. These are the carriers who both insure vehicles and which pays claims on them and deals with recycling them when there's a totaled vehicle. Let me suggest that the Secretary of State's report is going to be very helpful. I was a part of that group. I would suggest that one of the things the committee look at closely is the merit of having catalytic converters stamped at the manufacturing facility when the car is being built. Manufacturers already stamp engines, they stamp doors, they stamp accessory parts, engine parts such as alternators and the like. And that's the place we think the committee should consider in terms of getting really good stamping that will last and make it easier, at least on a going forward basis, to identify catalytic converters. And with that, Senator, I'd be happy in trying to answer any questions the committee might have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Garrity. We enjoy having you with us every time. Are there questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Thanks for your work on this in the past. We appreciate that. Now, I'm going to check with you, Darlene. We're all set?
You're all set.
All right. Listen, it's been wonderful. So we close the public hearing on this bill, and we will that will conclude our public hearings for today, our hearing for today. As you know, as you've heard and been part of, we had a bill last year presented by Senator Timberlake, an act to restrict sales of catalytic converters removed from motor vehicles. And we had talked about that, realizing it's a problem. We also asked the Bureau of Motor Vehicles, I believe, was the official group, to do some work on this and come back to us with some recommendations. And I'm going to go to Sam. And Sam, are you with us? Sam.
Hi, Senator.
Yeah, it's cold there. I can see. What we're going to do is you just give us a lead in on this, and then we'll get the presentation presented.
Sure. So let me pull up the letter that the committee sent last year. I'm sorry, Senator Diamond, will you just
Okay.
reiterate for me what exactly what you'd
That's
like me
fine.
to walk through?
I thought you might have had something you wanted to present prior to the secretary coming in.
No, not really. But I can refresh the committee on the letter from last year and the kind of where things were going during work session.
Have that reconvene, otherwise we'll just move over. It's no problem.
Yeah. All right. I don't have anything particular for you unless.
Yeah, very good. Sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot. I thought I was.
No worries. No worries.
You wanted to say something. See, that was easy, Madam Secretary. Now you're next.
Good afternoon, Senator Diamond, Representative Martin, distinguished members of the Transportation Committee. So it is a great honor for me to present to you the findings of the working group. Per the committee's request, pursuant to the carryover of LD 796, it was our pleasure to convene a working group to discuss and identify potential solutions to the issues identified in LD 796. The group was chaired by David Gilmet, Director of the Division of Enforcement, Anti-Theft and Regulation for the Bureau of Motor Vehicles. The working group was comprised of diverse stakeholders. I really appreciate the participation of members of the Bureau of Motor Vehicles, Department of Environmental Protection, Maine State Police, local law enforcement, prosecutors, the auto recyclers. It was very diverse, and a complete list is included in the report. We also appreciated the time that the committee took. There were 3 very detailed meetings that looked at comprehensive solutions, and I'm going to walk through the report. Hopefully each one of you has a copy. It is extensive. It is 19 pages. I promise you I'm not going to read 19 pages worth of text. But as we move through the report, what I would ask you to consider is, if you as a committee would like us to move forward with presenting you with amendment language that could be used as a substitute for or an addition to any bill before you, we are happy to present that. The working group developed draft language to accompany each one of these recommendations. And that is something that we would be pleased to do. Because that is your purview and not ours, we thought it premature to present a bill at this time. We will just present the report. So with no further ado, moving to the report itself, the Catalytic Converter Working Group report and recommended solutions. It starts with the legislative directive, goes into background information. And you already heard some of this, but I want to draw your attention to the values that the working group identified, estimated values, and this of course changes on a regular basis, but per ounce. So the market values for common metals found in catalytic converters in December 2021 were as follows: platinum, $957.90 per ounce. Palladium, $1,842.66 per ounce. I won't read them all, but I think it is instructive, and that the value of catalytic converters is determined, of course, by the year, make, and model of the vehicle in which the part is attached to. The geographic region where the catalytic converter is sold is factored into price, but there is substantial profit in catalytic converters. And so it is no wonder that we have seen the theft of these catalytic converters explode. As it's already been explained to you, thieves detach the catalytic converters from vehicles in every location you can imagine. It's very easy to detach these, and often buyers of the detached catalytic converters are based out of state. Large quantities of catalytic converters are purchased in-state and transported across state lines without adhering to Maine law, regulations, and licensing requirements. The ability to make a substantial profit has created a large volume of unlicensed activity. And as it has been described to you, social media has numerous listings for individuals openly soliciting the purchase. In 2021, just to share one aspect of the problem, Division of Enforcement, Anti-Theft and Regulation detectives, these are detectives at the Bureau of Motor Vehicles, investigated the activity of one unlicensed individual and discovered that that unlicensed individual sold 1,107 catalytic converters to a licensed facility and received $430 in payment. So unlicensed activity is spurred by this ease of theft without being detected. and the lack of penalties for engaging in recycling activity without a license. The cost to victims and insurance companies, even for a single catalytic converter theft, can be over $1,000. And of course includes loss of use of the motor vehicle until a replacement can be found. So I want to walk through next is the challenges section, because it's been referenced that there is existing law, but the existing law has not gone far enough for effective enforcement and deterrence. So first and foremost, as you've heard, the industry does not require standardized identifying marks to be placed on a catalytic converter to associate the part with a specific vehicle identification number. The absence of a unique part identifier makes it difficult, if not impossible, for law enforcement to connect a catalytic converter to a specific vehicle. And without tying the detached catalytic converter to the specific vehicle, it is problematic to identify the victim of the theft, and that results in prosecution challenges. That's the first problem. The second problem is the absence of laws related to the transportation and possession of detached catalytic converters. Existing laws do not identify who can be in possession of detached catalytic converters, and so that makes it difficult for law enforcement to detect and deter illegal activity. Third, the existing laws associated with the purchase and sale of catalytic converters are insufficient to address concerns related to licensed and unlicensed transactions. This includes an absence of clear definitions of catalytic converter, seller, and buyer, creating issues when applying the scrap metal statutes to unlicensed activity as well. Business record statutes are insufficient for tracking purchase and sale of catalytic converters and are inconsistent with records related to the licensed recyclers. So there are a number of recommendations for record keeping. And then finally, insufficient regulatory oversight. So current scrap metal laws are established in Title 30A, but no specific agency has been tasked with oversight, hindering some proactive enforcement to ensure compliance by licensed entities. So the task force recommends adding provisions to existing laws to bring the purchase and sale of vehicle or vehicle parts by a scrap processor also under the regulatory authority of a recycler license issued by the Secretary of State. So I'm going to stop there. Any questions about the challenges before I move into more details about the recommendations and the work of the working group?
Thank you very much. Yes, that's a good place to make a little pause in case there are committee questions, comments, anything from the committee, any on what we've heard to this point. I guess we're all set to go.
Okay.
That's all over. Yes.
All right. So I want to just walk through the working group process because I think it is really impressive. The first meeting was held on October 14th, 2021. The working group discussed various law enforcement and industry concerns, discussed the scope of the problem. A significant portion of the conversation was given to the potential marking of detached catalytic converters. Methods of marking and possible procedures were discussed. And there was general agreement that marking detached catalytic converters should be required in Maine as part of the solution to the problem. So following that meeting, the detectives in the Division of Enforcement, Anti-Theft and Regulations at Bureau of Motor Vehicles conducted some experiments to identify how different methods for marking catalytic converters. Techniques applied included engraving, chemical etching, paint pen, stamping, and permanent marker. Engraving emerged as the most viable option with a total of 1 minute and 45 seconds on a detached catalytic converter in the lab setting. This technique proved to be the least susceptible to tampering or removal and easy to implement. And there is in Appendix B a full detailed report, including pictures of the catalytic converter marking process. The second thing that Bureau of Motor Vehicles Division of Enforcement did was issue a survey to all Maine law enforcement agencies soliciting input into the number of reported thefts from each jurisdiction in the last 3 years, 2019, 2020, and 2021. One of the challenges, of course, is that even as these agencies report thefts to the Federal Bureau of Investigation using the Unified Crime Reporting System, there's not a uniform way to record catalytic converter theft. So it's very difficult to identify the true nature and extent of the problem. But one thing you should see is that of the 30 agencies who responded from approximately 134 Maine police agencies, in 2019, there were only 30 reported thefts. In 2020, that increased to 270 thefts. Now, one incident included the theft of 113 total catalytic converters. So we're not talking about 270 catalytic converters. We're talking about 270 individual incidents of varying numbers of catalytic converters associated with them. And in 2021, that increased yet again to 367 reported incidents of catalytic converter theft. So what you see is a 900% increase in catalytic converter theft complaints between 2019 and 2020, and then a subsequent 36% increase for an overall increase of 1,223%. So if you feel like catalytic converter theft has really exploded in recent years, the data just from this small portion of law enforcement agencies that responded to the survey does in fact bear that out. A second working group meeting was held on October 28th, 2021. The working group discussed potential legislative proposals, industry concerns, and law enforcement considerations were balanced with the need for regulatory oversight. And then a third meeting was held on November 16th, 2021, where the working group discussed some proposed legislative changes and recommendations in this report and shared feedback, as well as examined the findings of the Division of Enforcement Salvage Unit's catalytic converter marking project. The working group also discussed the resources required to adequately enforce any new laws. So that's the process. Before I go to recommendations, any questions about the process?
Thank you for that. Are there questions from the committee regarding what we've heard to this point? I'm curious about the 30 law enforcement agencies that responded. Were they basically spread around the state, or were they more focused in a particular region?
So Appendix A has a complete list of the law enforcement agencies who responded, and you will see it is distributed across the state. They're listed in order of response from Southwest Harbor to Milo. You see Sanford and Scarborough, Augusta. So truly all across the state, and Maine State Police Troop E reporting the largest number of incidents, 98 total incidents in 2021 as of the fall.
Thank you for directing that out.
Yep.
Any other questions from the committee? Okay, again, we can proceed.
Great. I'm going to scroll back up to the recommendations. So the recommendations from the committee begin on page 5. So if you want to scroll down to the bottom of page 5, you can see where the recommendations begin. And they're structured in the report in terms of recommendations and then an explanation, the rationale behind the recommendation. So first are included recommended revisions to Title 29A, Chapter 9. Of course, is the Bureau of Motor Vehicles statute. So these recommended changes to Maine statute would establish regulations for marking, possession, and transportation of catalytic converters, improve licensing requirements related to the purchase and sale of catalytic converters and their contents, and provide law enforcement and prosecutors with tools to combat the theft of catalytic converters. So I am going to read these because I think they're really important. And this is where we're seeking guidance to you as to whether you would like bill language for them. So recommendations for marking. All catalytic converters that are detached from a motor vehicle should be required to be marked at the time of detachment. The marking should consist of an engraved full vehicle identification number of the vehicle that the catalytic converter was removed from. The person removing the catalytic converter should be responsible for marking the part. Now, an exception in recommendation 2 to the full vehicle identification number would be allowed for licensed recyclers for removing catalytic converters from vehicles they're purchasing as part of whole vehicles. They would be allowed to engrave a stock number and their license number in place of a full vehicle identification number so that the part can be processed in the same manner as other parts removed from the motor vehicle. Licensed dealers should be required to mark catalytic converters with full VIN numbers before the sale of a vehicle. 4, it should be a violation for anyone to intentionally mismark a catalytic converter or remove or deface a catalytic converter that has been marked. And 5, it should be a violation to possess detached catalytic converters that are not marked according to the provisions of law. So I won't go through all of the benefits of implementation, but what I will say is the problem is that current industry standards do not require marking of catalytic converters. And without a unique number, it is difficult, if not impossible, for law enforcement to track a catalytic converter back to its vehicle of origin and determine lawful possession of the catalytic converter. So this information is essential to detecting the victim in a theft investigation, tying a specific catalytic converter to a specific theft so that theft charges can be issued and restitution for the victim be secured. Any questions about these recommendations?
Questions from the committee? I wanted to lead off. Were these recommendations, did you say they were all unanimous?
My understanding is yes, these were the unanimous recommendations from the working group. I certainly invite working group members who have concerns about them to weigh in if I misspoke, but my understanding is these were consensus recommendations.
Okay, and the other just curious part, I know you've made reference to it, but marking would mean marking all existing ones, yes?
It would. And so one of the things, Mr. Garrity spoke, and I know he was a member of the working group, and he spoke to the idea of having the manufacturers mark rather than the dealers. And so that's certainly an area where we may want to have a question or a conversation, or the committee may want to have further discussion. Right. I think one of the challenges is whether Maine could require the manufacturers to mark at manufacturer. One of the benefits for dealers marking is if dealers experience theft, then law enforcement could track that theft and potentially provide restitution to the dealer. And B, you would, moving forward, start to address the challenge of unmarked detached catalytic converters.
Thank you. Representative Perry has a question.
Yeah, just real quick. You talk about violations, and I had to step out, so I might have missed some of this. I'm of the opinion, like I mentioned to you before, Secretary Bellows, I think we need to throw the book at everybody. And I think that we've allowed little fines and, well, if you've done this, and I also think that there's got to be a huge problem in other states. We can't be the only state. So have you reached out to, or did the working group at all reach out to other states to see about their coordinating language where the markings need to be on these? I can't imagine there's not a serial number on the catalytic converter anywhere, that it's all just a blank piece of metal with thousands of dollars worth of parts in it. I think we've got to throw the book at people that possess it, that buy it, not just the people stealing them, because it's the people buying them too. And something has got to be put in. We can mark all we want, but if we don't really go after the people that are doing this on both sides of the issue, I don't think all the marking in the world, gets somebody for petty theft. I think this has got to be serious penalties. It's got to be for both the buyer and the seller.
So you'll see later in the report, as we move through the recommendations, that there are a series of criminal penalties that are suggested in this report. And you will, it is somewhat unusual, perhaps. I do not make a request for criminal penalties on behalf of the task force lightly. But I do think, to your point, Representative Perry, that this is an area of unregulated activity where the tools for law enforcement are extremely limited, and criminal penalties were the consensus recommendation of the stakeholders. You heard a stakeholder, Mr. Bell, say earlier, without penalties, any level of oversight or regulation would be inadequate, because there would not be a way to hold the people who are breaking the law accountable. And then similarly, and Director Guillemette is available to answer any questions from the committee, as are BMV detectives, Mark Silk, Derek Dinsmore, also participated in this working group and have extensive experience as detectives investigating motor vehicle crimes. And what they have shared with me is that the lack of marking makes it virtually impossible to trace a detached catalytic converter to a specific theft incident. And without that, it is very difficult to bring about a prosecution. So, but I'm happy to speak to this. And if the committee wants us to develop legislation, there is draft legislation. If the committee wants us to bring that forward to the committee for its consideration, we'd be happy to work with the Office of the Attorney General and others and Sam to make sure that that meets the OPLA drafting guidelines and move forward with that.
Thank you. Excellent. Representative Seabra has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, Secretary. So the question is, in the marking of these catalytic converters, the markings on the catalytic converter will affect this illegal trade only up to a certain point. Once is the marking with the serial number of the vehicle going to stop the illegal trade, or is it only going to mean that during the transportation, if someone catches them in the act, then they will be able to trace that particular catalytic converter back to the origin? But once it's at the place, the facility, the cargo ship that it's going to China in, I'm not sure how the serial number stops this crime. So maybe you could explain that a little better.
Absolutely. And I'm not sure if any of the detectives from the Bureau of Motor Vehicles are able to be promoted to be panelists as well, because they are the true experts. I really want to applaud Director Dave Gilmet for his work in overseeing this panel. So I'm not sure, Sam or Darlene, if it's possible to bring in Director Gilmet.
Yeah, he's on his way.
Question. Oh, wonderful. So if that's okay with you, Representative Seabra, I'm going to do my best to answer, but then ask Director Gilmet, who has a career in law enforcement, to expand and clarify anything that I've perhaps omitted. So my understanding is that having this would enable the recyclers, the scrap metal dealers, those who are purchasing those detached catalytic converters, to be able to have assurances that they know that what they're purchasing is legitimate, that it's either part of a whole vehicle, in which case it doesn't need to be marked until they mark it, or if it's not part of a whole vehicle, that they know then it's of illegitimate origin. But Director Gilmet, I don't know if you were able to hear in that transfer when you were getting pulled in, Representative Seabra's question was, with marking of the catalytic converter, and Representative Seabra, please correct me if I'm wrong, would it help us catch only the individual thieves, the ones who, have it in their vehicle if it's unmarked and they just detached it from a vehicle on the street in Fairfield, or would it help with the larger wholesale illegal theft and resale of the catalytic converters?
Good afternoon, Director Gilmet. We're very pleased. Nice to see you again, by the way, and thank you for being with us. And you've heard the question laid out there very well, so we're glad you could be with us, so please.
Senator Diamond, Representative Martin, members of the committee. I'm pleased to be here, and it's nice to see you again, Senator. The marking of the catalytic converter, as it stands right now, there is no markings on the catalytic converter. By marking the catalytic converter, it gives law enforcement a tool to work with to go back to catch the thieves or determine what vehicle the catalytic converter came out of. As far as selling it to either a licensed recycler or non-licensed recyclers, our recommendation was that it would be a violation of the law to purchase a catalytic converter without the vehicle VIN number on it. So, like any other complaint that law enforcement gets, if once we receive a complaint and we learn that purchasing catalytic converters or someone is purchasing catalytic converters that do not have the vehicle VIN numbers on them, then we would take appropriate law enforcement action to correct that. The licensed recyclers, there's no doubt in my mind that if when a catalytic converter was presented to them, if it didn't have the VIN numbers marked on it, they wouldn't purchase that catalytic converter. If they did, they would be in violation of law. Hopefully that answers your question, Representative.
Yeah, I think you want to do a follow-up, Representative Seabrook?
I do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All right. So I'm still, it doesn't add up to me. Where's the choke point in this crime that the serial number is really going to help with? Is it the person who's actually out there cutting them off of cars, or is it the person who's actually purchasing the stolen goods that this is going to really help with?
Representative Severs, both actually. The person that's cutting the catalytic converters off the car now is in possession of a catalytic converter with no identification on it. So if in fact he had it in the back of his pickup and he was stopped by law enforcement, and law enforcement even suspected that this was cut off a vehicle, there wouldn't be much you could do about it, because you have no way of tracing that catalytic converter back to a owner vehicle. So as it stands today, so even if you have suspicion with no way to prove that this is a violation of law, you wouldn't be able to do that. With the VIN number on the catalytic converter, you would be able to put that catalytic converter to a vehicle, a specific vehicle, which would be the victim of the theft. And then through normal law enforcement procedures, you would investigate that crime, and whereas you would probably be in possession, you would be in possession of that catalytic converter now because it has no VIN number on it, then you would work that case back and charge the appropriate people. If someone brought the catalytic converter to a recycler, the recycler wouldn't accept that because it wouldn't have a VIN number on it. If the recycler did accept it with no VIN number, then what we proposed, he would be in violation of law. So you know, it's like any other case. Once you get the case and you start working on it, then you, through the normal investigation, is where hopefully you come up with the perpetrators that stole the catalytic converter.
Can I follow up one more time, Senator?
Sure, of course.
Okay, so it seems to me this is probably more of a regional problem than just a Maine problem. Seeing as Maine is 1.3 million people, and we've got Massachusetts to the south of us with quite a large population compared to Maine. Wouldn't this, I mean, even the suggestion that the manufacturers would serialize these, or the new car dealer would serialize them, still only keeps it a very Maine-specific solution to a bigger problem. Because what's stopping somebody from now cutting them off of a car and just driving down 95 fairly quickly to a state that doesn't have these kind of regulations?
Right at the moment, there isn't anything that would deter that. But if we were to mark these catalytic converters, and we would rely also on the industry that is doing the process properly, to, if they learned of the fact that someone from, say, Massachusetts or Connecticut were coming here and buying illegal catalytic converters, then hopefully the industry would make contact with us, and I'm sure they would, because they are victims of this crime also. They would make contact with us, and then we would proceed from there with you know, an investigative process to bring these people to justice.
Okay, Bill, Senator, just one more quick follow-up. Okay. So, Dave, let me ask you. So, if this process is to start as soon as we can start it, what kind of a lag time or what kind of a timeline do you see this actually being able to affect, seeing as the number of them that are out there now is just about all of them, before it becomes something that makes it a comprehensive solution to the problem?
Well, there were two suggestions that we made. One is that the automobile dealers mark the catalytic converters with the VIN number prior to the sale of the vehicle, whereas they have to inspect the vehicle anyway, and the vehicle is going to be up on the lift, and that would be their opportunity to mark the VIN number onto the catalytic converter. All the vehicles that are out there today with no markings on the catalytic converter, our second suggestion was and would be to require anyone who detaches a catalytic converter from the vehicle that they must place the VIN number on the catalytic converter. Now, if they fail to do that, they would be in possession of a unmarked catalytic converter, which would be a violation of the law. And if they took it to a recycler, then the recycler would not purchase that catalytic converter because it is unmarked. And at that point in time, the recycler would make contact with us, and we would pursue those people that were in possession of the unmarked catalytic converter. So it's kind of a situation where we're asking help from the automobile industry to mark the catalytic converters, and anyone who detaches a catalytic converter from a vehicle would be required under law to mark it with the VIN number. And that is the key to prosecution of the thieves that are stealing these catalytic converters.
Thank you, Representative Bryant.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. My concern was similar to Representative Seaver.
Okay.
In the interim, I just see the taking those converters across the state line and dealing with them that way, unless it's a more systemic approach for regional and nationwide, like you said, with the manufacturers. But in the meantime, I just see them just going across the state line. If they get there, they'll move.
Well, one of our suggestions is if you're in possession of an unmarked catalytic converter, and for instance, if you're southbound on 95 and you have a bunch of them in the back of your truck and you get stopped by a trooper or any other law enforcement officer, and he sees the catalytic converters with no markings on them, then you're in violation with possession. Now, could this process still take effect where people come up from out of state and purchase the illegal catalytic converters? Yes, it could. It would, at least until a point in time where, through whatever means, law enforcement would become aware of that, and then hopefully take action to put a stop to it. But it's like any other thing. If you go into Walmart and steal a bunch of TVs, you know, unless somebody sees you or somebody reports you or you get stopped by law enforcement, you may get away with it.
Thank you, Representative Seaver again.
Yeah, thank you, Senator. Sorry for another follow-up, but so what's to stop someone who steals these for a living if there's no standardization at the beginning of the process? When, say, it's a new catalytic converter, you're going to have mechanics putting serial numbers on these removed catalytic converters. So what's to stop somebody from just putting looking at the VIN through the windshield, writing it down, and putting it onto it when they get back to their shop before they turn it back in? So is there a standardization process for the markings?
If I understand you correctly, part of the process that we were going to recommend is that whenever anyone detaches a catalytic converter, it would have to have the VIN number from the car that they took it off of. Could somebody just put any old VIN number on it? Yes, they could. If they did that and they got caught at it, then they would be in violation of placing an improper VIN number on the catalytic converter. So if I am a uniformed officer and I stop a vehicle and I see that it has several catalytic converters in it, I can take those catalytic converters, the numbers off those catalytic converters, and run them and find out what the vehicles are that they come off from. And by doing so, it would be easy to check and find out if in fact the catalytic converters were reported stolen off those vehicles. So yes, as a thief, I could take the VIN number off the dash, take my battery powered Sawzall and cut the catalytic converter off and mark it and walk away. If I get stopped and the trooper runs the number off that catalytic converter and it comes back to a vehicle that reported the theft, then I'm in a lot of trouble.
Yes, Representative Perry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Maybe also, other than just the markings, is everybody has a smartphone today. Maybe pictures prior to it being taken off, after it was taken off, while it's being taken off, a picture of the car, or, you know, some more documentation that makes it really hard for a thief that's trying to do this. I think you're going to know if it's somebody, and then you'll have the tracking of the phone if it's a thief doing it, is just some more documentation or whatever that makes this harder. And it's going to be harder until it's a national standard to do anything. But I don't know if you heard me mention to Secretary Bellows, I'm one of those, I think, on this thing, you stop people by making the penalty so big that it's not even worth thinking about taking something or purchasing from somebody a catalytic converter that's cut off. You just make it so onerous or so punitive that no dealer, no parts person, no anybody's going to buy one of these without a whole list of documentation proving that this came from my vehicle. This is before it goes cut off. This is after it was cut off. Here's a picture of the car that it came off from, and here's the owner of the car. And I mean, you can make up a form and have all that. But I just think that, you know, along with that, until it's a national standard, I agree with Representative Sieber and Bryant that it's still going to be an issue partly, but you make it so punitive that anybody in possession without a whole list of documentation is going to be in real trouble.
That's a good point. And I think when they come back, and I'm sure the committee would want this to happen, when we ask the secretary to come back with some language, have them had thought through that from their point of view to offer some suggestions along those lines would be very helpful. Because I think obviously the penalties play a big issue.
I also think it should be, Mr. Chair, I also think we really need to find out, and maybe this was in the report, I didn't lost in my email, so that's why I'm kind of winging this. Find out from New Hampshire, Massachusetts, New York, Connecticut, you know, what their issues are, what their plans are, what their thoughts are on, you know, maybe having the AG look at this, or Secretary Bellows reach out to her counterparts in the other states and kind of make this a real regional thing, a real regional push to force the, you know, the national markings of these or whatever. I've already sent a thing off to Senator Collins' office as we were speaking here with having, you know, something national that needs to be looked at and done on this situation.
Thank you, Representative Perry. Are there other questions of Director Gilmet? If not, we will move on to Madam Secretary, and so you have further presentation.
We have 11 more recommendations, and I would ask, with the committee's discretion, Senator Diamond, that Director Gilmet stay in part of the meeting in case there's some specific questions specific to law enforcement, given his experience and also his leadership as chair of the task force.
Of course, he's always welcome. He knows that, and thank you for bringing that up.
Wonderful. So the next set of recommendations begin on the top of page 7. And it's 3 recommendations for purchasing catalytic converters and contents, because Representative Perry is exactly right. We need to have a serious and comprehensive approach. So the first recommendation, only a licensed recycler should be authorized to purchase or acquire detached catalytic converters or their contents. Meaning it would be a penalty, it would be a crime to purchase or acquire detached catalytic converters if you had not applied for and received the licensed recycler. 2, recyclers should not be allowed to purchase or acquire a detached catalytic converter or remove the contents from a detached catalytic converter unless it has been clearly marked with the full vehicle identification number of the vehicle in which it was removed. 3, recyclers should be required to report information about the purchase of a detached catalytic converter to a regional property and recovery tracking system administered by a regional law enforcement support organization. So here's on page 7, you also see the benefits of limitation. But by only limiting the purchase and acquisition of detached catalytic converters and catalytic converter contents to licensed recyclers, that would allow the movement of catalytic converters to be controlled and put anyone else in violation. Similarly, the working group agreed that requiring recyclers to report purchase information to a regional property and recovery tracking system administered by a regional law enforcement support organization would allow law enforcement to proactively track the sale of catalytic converters and look for illegal sales and unlicensed activity. The use of a standardized reporting system would also reduce repeated requests for information regarding recycler records by different law enforcement agencies investigating thefts in different jurisdictions. Pawn shops in Maine are already required to report sale information to a regional property and recovery tracking system. And additionally, some Maine municipalities already mandate that the licensed recyclers within their jurisdictions report sale data to a centralized tracking system. The Bureau of Motor Vehicles Division of Enforcement worked on a pilot project, which is currently in progress, involving the use of a regional property and recovery tracking system being tested by 6 licensed recyclers here in the state. The program is offered at no cost to the business or taxpayers, additional cost to taxpayers, and can be used as a record management system for the business. There are no technology requirements except to have a computer with internet access. The system is designed to fulfill all of the recycler records requirements. It safeguards proprietary information for the businesses and can be easily modified to track requirements for purchasing catalytic converters. There's a series of additional recommendations. There are 8 more recommendations. I can continue to read through all of the recommendations, or we can take questions about the recommendation of the task force that only licensed recyclers be permitted under the law to purchase these detached catalytic converters and that they be required to keep records.
I think that's a natural pause.
Okay.
Are there questions from the committee on those previously just mentioned? Thank you. I think we've all seen these before, so it's really, but it's also good to have the presentation. So believe me, this is time spent. So thank you.
So on page 8, you see recommendations for the transportation of catalytic converters. And this gets to the issue of the person doing the detaching. A person that is transporting 1 or more detached catalytic converters should be required to allow law enforcement to inspect the parts upon request. With the exception of regulatory agents, the inspection of the catalytic converters in transit by law enforcement should be pursuant to a lawful stop for another statutory offense. 2, a licensed recycler that is transporting 1 or more detached catalytic converters should be required to allow law enforcement to inspect the parts upon request. 3, recyclers utilizing stock numbers and license numbers in place of full vehicle identification numbers should be required to provide a manifest to law enforcement officers upon request. That includes the full VIN numbers for the catalytic converters along with the stock numbers. I'll pause there. So it's a recommendation basically making it illegal to transport a detached catalytic converter.
Thank you. Are there questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you.
Recommendation for disposal of unmarked catalytic converters. So all unmarked catalytic converters seized by law enforcement should become the property of the Secretary of State. Secretary of State should mark the catalytic converters before disposal, and a licensed recycler would be authorized to dispose of the catalytic converters marked by the Secretary of State, and proceeds from disposal would return to the Main Highway Fund. Let's address the issue of seizure. I'm going to move down to recommendations for changes. Well, that concludes the recommendations for Title 29A. There are also some recommendations for Title 30A.
I don't see questions at this point, so we can move on.
So Recommendations for Title 30A, Chapter 183, Sub 1A start on page 9. The recommendations include adding a definition of catalytic converter and updating existing statutes to clarify language for scrap metal processors and sellers. Revise the scrap metal statutes to clarify that the purchase and sale of motor vehicles and motor vehicle parts require that the scrap metal processor be licensed as a recycler. 3, add record requirements for the purchasing of detached catalytic converters to include the recording of the markings on the detached catalytic converter. Revise existing scrap metal records requirements to identify the records that are required for retail and wholesale purchases and ensure the retention period is consistent with record requirements. 4, clarify the requirements for scrap metal processors and recyclers that are conducting wholesale transactions. And 5, a recommendation from the Department of Environmental Protection, clarify that a licensed recycler may only sell a used catalytic converter for scrappage. Those are recommendations for Title 30A.
Thank you. Questions to this point? Seeing none, thank you.
Enforcement authority recommendation is on page 10, and you heard a stakeholder say this earlier, without adequate resources to enforce the law, any changes would be potentially meaningless. So it was recommended that the Secretary of State, Division of Enforcement, Anti-Theft and Regulations have the licensing and regulatory authority over this area, given current licensing and regulatory authority over the automobile and recycling industries, and experience investigating crimes related to stolen vehicles and parts. So the stakeholders unanimously agreed that the Secretary of State, Division of Enforcement, Anti-Theft and Regulations of Bureau of Motor Vehicles should be charged with regulatory oversight and primary law enforcement responsibilities. It was also agreed that due to the scope of the problem, all law enforcement agencies should have the authority to enforce the provisions outlined in the recommended revisions. The staffing recommendation, due to the magnitude of the problem and the geographical size of the state of Maine, it's estimated that at least 3 detectives stationed throughout the state would be needed to enforce the new laws, rules, and regulations, and to investigate the crimes, with 1 senior detective to supervise the unit activities and a clerk to facilitate the increase in administrative responsibilities also recommended. It was also suggested by the prosecutorial representative on the working group that a half-time prosecutor be funded to prosecute the catalytic converters cases statewide. We can provide cost details upon request. So in conclusion, the working group agreed that the state of Maine should adopt legislation to combat the theft and illegal sales of catalytic converters. The recommendations for changes to Maine law would provide much needed regulatory oversight, but also new criminal penalties to provide law enforcement with effective tools to detect, deter, and prosecute violations related to catalytic converter theft and illegal sales. And with that, I will conclude my presentation, and we are happy to take any additional questions. We are also happy to provide the committee with draft legislation should the committee like to see these recommendations translated into potential statutory language.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Might I add, everybody who worked on this, great job. There's a lot of work to put into this. Obviously, a lot of corners had to be turned, and a lot of work to focus in on all the minutiae that some of us might not have thought of along the way. So thank you for that. Please share that with everybody and with the director and the chair of it, of course, too. Is it the pleasure of the committee that we ask the secretary to present us with some language, some draft language that we can look at? Is that a Representative Martin, Danny Martin?
Oh, clearly, yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was going to mention that prior to closing. I think we should request that the Secretary of State's office provide a draft legislation. And when the legislation or the amendment to 796 or any other appropriate piece of legislation is included, that would give us further opportunity to digest and ask questions. I do have one question as chair.
Yes.
For staffing, Madam Secretary, for those 3 detectives, these are assigned to your department, correct?
That's correct.
All right.
It was unanimously agreed by the working group that the Bureau of Motor Vehicles Division of Enforcement detectives were the best qualified and experienced to do statewide enforcement.
And also funded by your department?
That's right.
Great, thank you.
And we can prepare a fiscal note to attach the that recommendation.
Would you also recommend, if the committee wants to move forward, which I hope we do, that be tacked on to 796, or what would be your recommendation?
I defer to the committee. It seems that LD 796 might be an appropriate vehicle, given that that was the legislation that prompted your formal request for the working group to be convened. Senator Dill has also presented a bill today that has language that's very close to some of the recommendations. So I think you've got a couple of excellent vehicles for that to move forward.
Great, thank you. Great presentation.
Thank you. Yes, and I had talked to Senator Dill, and we both, I think it's fair to say we both agreed that carrying it, the bill that was carried over would be probably the one that we would end up using, but that doesn't mean we couldn't add some things from his bill to it if that's the case. So Representative Bryant.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the report, Madam Secretary. My concern on the other end is, as Representative Perry had mentioned, penalties, and I get nervous on penalties. I wondered if there's, I know that it could go beyond our committee in these penalties, but I would like to see some suggestions of what the penalties relating to other issues that might be similar, so we have some sort of a platform to start from, and then they can choose to go up or down. But for me, I'd just like to see what a suggestion of what related penalties might be, and let the committee go where they want to go.
And I know that the Criminal Law Advisory Commission is meeting on Friday as well. And if Sam's available, perhaps to work with our legislative analysts on our team, maybe we can present preliminary language to CLAC and get any recommendations or feedback that they might have. But what I hear from you is you'd like some analysis or some presentation of comparable penalties in other places in statute. And we can do that, as well as the investigatory work that I believe Representative Sebra and others had asked for about what others, and Representative Perry had asked for about what other states are doing. So we can certainly prepare that.
That's good to hear. That I think CLAC should have some exposure to whatever recommendations that come up. That's always a nice group to bounce some things off and get some varied opinions. So that's really good. Thank you for that. Other questions? Yeah, and thank you very, very much. It was everybody who worked on this, and please share everything. And your presentation was excellent, and we really appreciate all the work that's gone into this. I think it's much bigger than some of us thought it would end up being, only because I didn't have a grasp on all the little pieces and all the little areas that we had to consider or should be considered before we move forward. So thanks again. Any other comments from the committee members? Representative Bryant, did you have a question? Oh, I guess you didn't. Guess you're all set. Thank you very much, Madam Secretary, and we look forward to your draft legislation. Well done. Our last presentation today is going to be by Lieutenant Bruce Scott. As you remember, we have this inspection issue that's been before the committee several times. It's come back and forth, and it's something that I think, hopefully, looking at their report, that I know they have some recommendations and done some research on this, and that'll give us a little clearer view of what their work has shown, at least. And we couldn't be more pleased than to have Lieutenant Scott be I believe you were the chair of that, as I recall. And thank you for all the work again on this one. We look forward to your presentation. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Senator Diamond. I appreciate being able to speak today on behalf of the working group. As you recall, this was an informal working group as a result of LD 284. That was officially going to be a working group that was presented, or I believe chaired at least by the Transportation Committee, and ended up turning into a request in an informal process that took place that was chaired by the Department of Public Safety, and in particular by myself. Before I get started, for those that don't know me, my name is Bruce Scott. I'm the Troop Commander of the Traffic Safety Unit for the Maine State Police. I oversee the Air Wing, the Crash Unit, the Inspection Unit, Fleet, and Supply. So the Inspection Unit, while it's only 1/5 of my responsibilities, is very near and dear to my heart. And those that have heard me testify in the past know that I do have some passion for it. So I appreciate the opportunity to be able to discuss with this group our findings. I'm going to try to be short and succinct because I recognize that these are always tough when you have 13, 14 pages of testimony to try to really call that out. So my goal was to present back to you the unanimous decisions that were made by this group. So there was 10 total members working on this group. And of those 10, 6 of them were outside of the Maine State Police. So as I get started, I just wanted to tell you the makeup of the group. Major Brian Scott was responsible for administration and oversight. I was the chair. Sergeant Randy Keaton was my co-chair. He is also our fleet vehicle manager for the Maine State Police. A pretty heavy lift. He spent 5 years overseeing the inspection program prior to that. And we felt it was important to bring him in because we have over 600 vehicles in our fleet and we travel over 20 million miles. And these are vehicles that are driven to the extreme, and we know that and we understand it. So it was really good to have somebody like him that could help us make our decisions on where this inspection program may be able to go should we decide to introduce any changes to the current program. Supervisor Randy McKeel, he is the current supervisor of the Motor Vehicle Inspection Unit, and he oversees the daily operations. Beyond that, everyone else was a volunteer to be on this group, and I stress that because this was a pretty in-depth dive. While we thought it would be a light lift, it turned into over 12 hours of meetings, 6 different meetings. But I would say between me and my staff's time, 40 or 50 hours of research. I'd like to thank Representative Bruce White. He's sitting here today on this committee. He was an instrumental piece of this committee. He is the Democratic Party representative. I'd like to also thank Representative Mike Perkins. He is the Republican representative of the Transportation Committee who sat on this. I point out that both representatives, while they spent a bunch of time, and I really do appreciate that, their openness, their eagerness, and also playing devil's advocate and asking the tough questions. It was important that we really sought that honest information out from all of us to make sure if there was any issues or concerns with the program that we could make it better. And Representative White asked some tough questions and made sure that we did play devil's advocate and we discussed the issues that have come before this committee for years. Representative Perkins and I had multiple conversations, and I bring it up because those that don't know, Representative Perkins was extremely ill during this time, the November and December, when I held these 6 meetings. And while he wasn't able to attend every meeting, he made himself available to me by phone, even outside of these committees, or these working groups, I should say, so that we could have some discussions. And I thought that was pretty impressive that his phone was always with him and he was willing to text with me, even when he was in the hospital and going through extreme symptoms from COVID. And he did give me permission to mention that. So I think that we feel safe discussing it. Mr. Tom Brown with Maine Auto Dealers Association. Most of you on this committee know him. We feel like he had a lot to offer representing the large scale businesses that perform inspections within the state of Maine. He represents about 115 new auto dealerships and everything that goes along with operating a dealership. We had Mr. Larry Morrow from Jim's Auto Sale. He is the liaison or representative for the rental industry. He also owns a repair shop himself. Mr. Michael Guay with the Sticker Station and Jim's Auto Repair business performs inspections in the southern part of the state. Mr. Dan Robertson from Bollier's Automotive, he performs inspections in northern Maine. When you go down through that list of participants that were willing to be on this group, those were the direct result of this work, or actually this committee that I'm sitting before right now. They had created this amendment and they asked for representatives to be here in this group that represented every class that I just discussed. So those weren't arbitrary folks. Those were the people that we selected based on your recommendations. I'll pause for a minute in case there's any questions before I go any further.
Any questions from the committee, points to be made, clarifications? Seeing none, you're all set, Lieutenant.
Thank you very much. So as I indicated, we met on 6 different occasions and we discussed thoroughly the current inspection program. I played devil's advocate to ensure that the group had to contemplate the positions that were not in favor of the program. Senator Diamond, if you want, I can share my screen and I can put this up, or I can just go through it. It's
No,
whatever.
no,
you
why don't you
prefer.
do that? I think there may be one or two people who might not have their report right with them, so that would be helpful.
Okay, let me see if we can get there.
There you go.
So are you seeing the first
Yep.
page that's presented the Joint Standing Committee on Transportation?
Everybody seeing that okay? Anybody who's not? I think we're good.
Okay, let me see if I can bring it in front of us now. No, unfortunately, it's on my wrong screen. So I hope you don't mind. I'm going to look a little bit to my left while I'm going through this.
That'll be fine.
This report back was prepared by myself and also Supervisor Randy McKeel, who took notes during the meetings. This is a report back on LD 284, which was the resolve to study the Maine's motor vehicle inspection program. I'll start here. This was the executive summary and the recommendations. We've already worked our way down to question number 1. So essentially, this group was asked to answer 3 distinct questions and then to provide feedback on any other issues that came up. To be short and succinct, we answered this by saying question number 1 was, should the inspection program continue? This working group unanimously decided that the motor vehicle inspection program should continue. We did a cost benefit analysis by looking at several different studies. We also reviewed some anecdote and some statistics, both from in Maine and other New England states. What we were able to determine from the Carnegie Mellon study that is attached as reference number 3 is that the motor vehicle inspection program in Maine saves approximately 51 lives per year. 2,214 fewer people were injured and approximately 7,277 fewer property damage crashes in 2020 alone. With that being said, we believe the benefit of 51 lives a year far exceeds all the costs associated with the current inspection program, and wanted to let you know that many other factors were considered that we'll discuss below. Question number 2, if the program should continue, how frequently should motor vehicles be inspected? This group discussed that at length and made the recommendation at the end unanimously that we continue to inspect vehicles annually. And again, as we get deeper into the different portions of this report back, I'll discuss with the group some of the conversations that we had. But we recommend we continue with an annual inspection program with all vehicles except school buses. Question number 3, the fee structure of the program. We were asked to evaluate the current fees, and the group unanimously agrees that the fee should be increased to somewhere between $25 to $35 per inspection. That will require a further conversation. Within that $25 to $35 fee, we are going to make a recommendation, which you'll see under question number 4. If there were any other issues that came up during this study, and electronic inspections came up, we had an in-depth conversation regarding leveraging technology, and we wanted to stay modern with current inspection practices. We have a goal to reduce fraud and protect our consumers. And with that being said, the recommendation would be that the state of Maine immediately adopt an electronic inspection program that would be vendor supported and have oversight and enforcement still done by the Maine State Police. Some of the background research and key points that were discussed during these meetings. I had Randy McKeel, the supervisor of the inspection unit, do a briefing what the current inspection program looks like in the state of Maine before we move forward. But essentially, if you read down through there, you'll see that in 2003, we did change our staffing within the inspection unit to go from sworn personnel to motor vehicle inspectors who are civilians that are absolute masters of their craft and have been able to really increase the value of our program. The inspection program has advanced over the years, and it's never been better. And I attribute that largely to the fact that we were able to change our process and bring on experts that were within the industry. The motor vehicle inspection unit currently is responsible for the overview of about 2,700 inspection stations, around 8,300 technicians. They review inspection stations every other year. They take care of technicians every 5 years. The clerical staff themselves is responsible for licensing and the processing of nearly 1.3 million stickers a year. I'll let the group read on at their leisure. I know that you got plenty to do. We're going to skip right down through to the motor vehicle inspection unit. Annual operating costs are around $1 million a year, and it generates around $3.5 million a year in revenue that gets deposited directly into the highway fund. Some of the research that was considered, I did just very small, short, succinct bullets. There are references at the end of each bullet, and the letter that was sent back, the email that was sent back to the Transportation Committee will have those reference numbers associated with an attachment, so that anybody who's interested in looking further at these studies certainly can do so. I pulled out what we felt was important and that we discussed and used to draw our basis of information and opinions from. So in 2008, the Missouri State Highway Patrol concluded that the national average of vehicles involved in fatal crashes with defects that don't have an inspection program are 1 in 77, as opposed to their state and similar states that have inspection programs at 1 in 120. In 2009, Pennsylvania's vehicle safety study that was conducted by Cambridge Systematics Incorporated had reported that their program saves between 127 and 187 lives a year and saves the taxpayers approximately $100 million. In 2017, as you can see, we're starting to get more current, more relevant. University of Texas at Austin Center for Transportation Research on Texas's inspection program reported. And what I felt was important is copied below. This is their words and their language, not mine or that of the groups. The vehicles with defects are twice as likely to result in a fatal crash. Vehicles from other states that have an inspection program are involved in fewer crashes in Texas than vehicles from other states without a program, indicating that a safety inspection program helps reduce the number of defective vehicles on the road. The percentage of crashes involving defective vehicles increases with higher speeds, as does the severity of the crash. The average crash costs related to vehicles with defects are more than $2 billion per year. Most defects are vehicle elements that would have failed an inspection. The frequency of fatalities, incapacitating injuries, and non-incapacitating injuries is higher for crashes involving vehicles with defects. Vehicle defects involved in crashes increase with age, and that highlights the importance of the inspection program to help ensure that the key safety components remain in good condition. The most prevalent type of defect-related crashes in Texas I found interesting was 23.5%, or sorry, it's 23.5% of the survey respondents identified that they had slick tires that failed an inspection. So the prevalent failure is for defective tires, yet there's still almost a quarter of all survey respondents said that their vehicle failed for tires, which means they caught a lot and there's still defective tires out there that are causing crashes. But the real important study, the one that we place the most weight and the most value in, is the most recent study. We know that we've heard other studies in the past. They've been presented to the group, and they've always been challenged and questioned based on either the area that they took place in, the short duration that they took place in, and other biases that somebody might feel moved forward with those studies. And while we feel like they're important to discuss, the most important study that we feel overcomes those burdens of biases is this Carnegie Mellon University study. This was a study that was sponsored by the U.S. Department of Transportation. It was conducted over 50 states, 44 years, and they looked at 1.3 million fatal crashes. Very, very accurate data. The FARS data that they use, which is the fatality accident system, reporting system that every state has to report to, is the gold standard, let's say, for reporting. There's a oversight of the responses to all of the data that is put into the FARS system. Because it's accurate, because they're trained, we felt like it was very reliable data. Sorry, I was looking for a note here that I can't find. But this panel data model provides strong evidence that jurisdictions experience lower motorway fatality rates due to the presence of an active safety inspection maintenance program. What they really said is there are 2.8% fewer fatalities per 100,000 vehicles registered in states that have a program. 2.8% fewer fatalities per 100,000. And that really jumped out at us. We have approximately 1.6 million vehicles that are registered in the state of Maine. We took out the vehicles that we know already had to be inspected federally. So we took out commercial vehicles, as did the Carnegie Mellon study. We also removed the trailers and other types of vehicles that we didn't feel would be contributing to this. And we ended up with 1.1 million vehicles that are registered in the state of Maine that are required to be inspected annually. That would be affected by that number. And so if you just multiply out that 2.8% times 11, you can see that we're talking more than 30% of fatal crashes. What that really represents in the state of Maine was about 50 fatalities a year. I'll pause just for a second when we go to the next page. If there's any questions about that study or any others.
Any questions from anybody? I do not see a hand raised. I think we're all set.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Some of the key points that we discussed was we looked at research with some of our federal partners. We recognized that AMVA, the American Association of Motor Vehicle Administrators, promotes periodic inspections and states that inspection programs can prevent vehicle failures on highways and crashes that may result in injuries or deaths. We also considered NHTSA, the National Highway Traffic and Safety Administration information, where they recommend that each state should have a program for periodic inspections of all registered vehicles to reduce the number of vehicles with existing or potential conditions that may contribute to crashes or increase the severity of crashes that do occur and should require the owner to correct such conditions. The Maine State Police had pulled one of its largest inspection chains in the state of Maine, VIP, and we had asked them to compile data for a few months so that we would be able to report back the fail rate. And they reported back that approximately 25% of all vehicles fail inspection in the state of Maine. Mike Guay with the sticker station actually tracks that data, and he was able to provide us with a 29% failure rate, and that's over several years, not just several months. Supervisor McKeel pulled school bus inspection data to determine that they have approximately a 30% out of service failure rate and a 70% overall defect rate. The reason we thought that was important is school buses are inspected annually in the state of Maine by a member of the Maine State Police, but they're also inspected twice a year by a licensed technician, which means these vehicles will be looked at 3 times a year. And being looked at 3 times a year, they still had a 70% defect rate. Now, the 30% out of service failure rate is just what it sounds like. That means that the vehicle was not allowed to be driven from there. It had to be repaired on site, and that's significant. We looked at the state of New Hampshire, who already has an electronic inspection program. They're reporting a 15% failure rate in their state, but they're also acknowledging that most stations there do a pre-inspection prior to actually performing the inspection. So they do the pre-inspection, do a repair, and once the vehicle passes, they call it a pass. Senator Diamond, I noticed a hand go up. Did you want me to stop when I saw a hand, or did you want to?
I don't have a full picture of the hands. Yes, Representative Perry, thank you for running into that.
Yeah, just real quick, Lieutenant Scott, can you explain the electronic inspection program and how that works?
Yeah, absolutely. And I do have a section that we're going to discuss that at length if you would prefer to hear the whole electronic inspection.
That's fine.
Portion.
Yeah, that'll work.
Okay, thank you so much. The number one failure that they reported in New Hampshire was brakes. We are seeing that's very consistent. Rhode Island has an electronic inspection program. They reported back at 5.5% failure rate. Extremely low failure rate, but they were also reporting to us that they know that's grossly underreported because of the pre-inspections that are taking place. And so what they're finding is, while the numbers are much higher, their technicians are reluctant to put down a fail if the defects were corrected during the time of the inspection. The state of Vermont has an electronic inspection program. They have similar findings to the Maine State Police. They're showing about a 12.5% failure rate, and also are acknowledging the pre-inspections, which is part of the problem with the data that we do get, is that we realize that they're underreported. Their number one fare is also brakes. The Maine Municipal Association, approximately 70 members, supports the motor vehicle inspection program and testifies frequently in front of the committee. Maine Auto Dealers Association, 115 new car dealerships also support the program and frequently testify in favor of it. The American Property Casualty Insurance Association supports the inspection program and asserts that Maine has one of the lowest rates in the country because of the program. Bruce Garrity represents the association. He testifies faithfully in favor of the inspection program on every bill, at least those that I've heard since 2015 or so. We believe that this was significant because we understand that insurance companies are really about profit and risk mitigation and nothing else. We believe that they're a neutral entity with a primary objective to make money. And they do so by paying out lessened claims for crashes involving property damage, injuries, and deaths. We also know that those that testify against the inspection program often cite the inconvenience, the costs, and the inconclusive data as a basis for opposing the program. But we now believe that we have better data to negate that claim. And we recognize that our inspection fees are still quite low, $12.50 to $18.50. We felt it was hard to say that the costs were high, primarily leaving inconvenience as a reason to stop the inspection program. Major Scott had worked with the group, and he stated that really all states have safety related equipment standards that are written into their laws. And he wanted to point that out to the group. We are not unique in Maine that we have equipment standards. We're unique maybe in that we have a different methodology for enforcement, but all states have equipment standards and different methods for enforcing those standards. While they don't have inspections in 34 states, they use other methods to ensure compliance, and primarily that's using police officers that stop vehicles and inspect them for defects. He recognized that the current political climate seems to be moving away from defect-related traffic stops and unpleasant encounters. So we wondered what that would leave us if the inspection program were to go away. What method would the state of Maine use to enforce the current equipment standards, which are not the same thing as the inspection standards within our manual? We recognize police officers aren't mechanics, and they may not be very well versed in the automotive industry. And we also recognize that roadside inspections are dangerous and very ineffective. Major Scott also offered an opinion that in order for vehicles to be safe, they have to be properly maintained. Even the loss of 10 pounds of tire pressure greatly affects handling and maneuverability of a vehicle. He discussed about his emergency vehicle operation course, where he was the lead instructor for 10 years, how they did a study themselves by just reducing the tire pressure by 10 pounds. And our students were not able to complete the course. They started to lose control, weren't able to complete in the required timing. So he found it quite interesting that just 10 pounds of air pressure caused adverse controllability of the vehicle. The current program protects the consumer by requiring used vehicles to meet minimum standards before they can be sold, and it holds the dealerships accountable by forcing them to bring the vehicles into compliance. Fewer defective motor vehicles on the road equals fewer crashes. We talked about reducing vehicle breakdowns, also increases the roadway reliability. We know that 25% of all fatal crashes are the result of a secondary event or collision, meaning that just having a vehicle broken down on the side of the road increases the chances of creating a crash. Dan Robertson with Bollier's Garage mentioned that he does commercial towing and has noticed more defects on vehicles from out of state where they do not have an inspection program. I had indicated that even if the inspection program were to be eliminated for light duty vehicles, the group should consider that we would still need to remain intact. Therefore, the state wouldn't realize any salary or benefit savings. The reason it would have to remain intact is there will still be commercial vehicle inspections and school bus inspections that will require stations and licensing. It's an infrastructure that would have to exist regardless. It's kind of like building roads. Even if the traffic was reduced, you still have to have the roads and they still have to be maintained. We believe also with the current vehicle and parts supply chain issue, any reduction in crashes as a result of the inspection program is a great victory. Anybody here that's had a vehicle broken down in the last year probably has also felt the pain of waiting weeks, if not months, just for parts, let alone to get into a repair facility. So we believe that just avoiding crashes in the first place is a pretty big victory and a pretty big win for the program. Representative Mike Perkins indicated with his background in law enforcement, driving schools, motor vehicle repair and inspection, school bus safety, et cetera, that he strongly believes in the inspection program and repeatedly cited that traffic and public safety was his primary concern. He also expressed his support of the consumer protection piece of the inspection program. I pointed out that Maine is north of the snow belt and therefore our vehicles are exposed to a harsher climate, more snow and ice treatments that promote the rusting, and that our roads were in worse condition than other states. That also leads to higher component failure rates. Then we had some conversations over the intervals at which the inspection should be performed. We believe that the annual inspection helps identify needed repairs so that they can be made in a timely fashion and possibly while still under warranty. If you wait for these major component failures to go maybe a year and a half or 2 years, you could push that vehicle well beyond its warranty period. And you could also have greater damage as a result of losing a component. It was also agreed that the vehicle age was less important than the vehicle usage. We talked about miles traveled also not being as important as maintenance. We did point out that there are more miles traveled per year in Maine than other states that do have a greater inspection interval. We believe that increasing the intervals in between inspections would require the state police to increase its minimum standards, thereby forcing premature unnecessary repairs. We believe that it would actually increase the cost of vehicle ownership. What we mean by that is current standards are fairly low. They're minimum standards to meet safety that we're not confident the vehicle would remain safe for 2 years. We have all we can do to make it a year without seeing vehicle components that fail. So if we were to wait 2 years, then we think that we would see a higher increase in failures and a higher rate of crashes. If you had, say, 230 seconds on your tires right now, that would pass an inspection. That would be good for another year. None of us felt comfortable that 230 seconds would be good for 2 years. Therefore, we would have to change that and increase it to perhaps 430 seconds. Same thing with the brakes and other wear components. Everything would have to be elevated or changed to make sure that it remains safe for that 2-year period. And I don't think that's really a direction that we are comfortable heading in, because we don't want to increase the cost of vehicle ownership. We talked about reducing the inspection to every 6 months and agreed that it could create safer vehicles, but that it would be too burdensome for Mainers and could create some opposition and a lack of compliance with the program. Supervisor McKeel pointed out that he used to live and work in Rhode Island as a police officer. He was there for 42 years. He had pointed out the difference between the two states because they have a 2-year inspection program and we have an annual. He talked about the size of the state and the fact that Mainers travel about double the miles, almost 15 billion miles per year in Maine, as compared to Rhode Island's right around 8 million. He said that he was a police officer there, and he noticed that there were fewer miles on the vehicles that he encountered on the roads as well. And here in Maine, when he's reviewing Maine inspection stub sheets, he regularly sees mileage in the 200,000 and 300,000. He also indicated Maine's harsher climate with harder driving conditions. Sergeant Randy Keaton talked about state police services, and he indicated that we inspect our vehicles in our fleet every 8,000 miles. They come in for maintenance and repair and get a complete inspection. And defects are often found even at these lower mileages for many reasons. Once again, showing that mileage and or age alone does not determine the appropriate inspection intervals. It's more important that we look at usage, maintenance, and the environment in which the vehicle operates. We already talked about that next bullet. If vehicles weren't required to be inspected annually, we believe that some would accumulate over 120,000 miles. Most warranties don't cover vehicles with over 100,000, and some warranties are much less than that. We believe that some of the defects would have been discovered in an annual inspection and caught before the manufacturer's warranty expired. We reviewed commercial vehicles because we recognize that commercial vehicles have to be inspected not only annually, but they're subject to roadside inspections. And they still have a 30% defect rate, even though they're stopped frequently. They have to pull into the weigh stations as they travel throughout the country, and they're often inspected multiple times a year, and yet still have a 30% defect rate. We recognize that no one has ever gone before the Transportation Committee and suggested that we change the intervals on commercial vehicles. We recognize most people understand the danger of a 100,000-pound vehicle that's going down the road with substandard equipment. We believe that the same concept applies to the lighter vehicles. Commercial vehicles only make up about 5% of the total number of vehicles on the roadway, and they're involved in far fewer crashes. With that in mind, if we wish to reduce the overall crash rates, save lives, reduce injuries, reduce secondary collisions, increase roadway reliability, and create a safer environment, that we have to apply inspection standards evenly across all types of vehicles. Larry Morrow pointed out that they see a lot of vehicles in their shops for inspections that are already months overdue. He said, if we decrease the frequency of inspections every 2 years, aren't we really talking about far more than 2 years in some cases then? I'll pause just for a second, make sure there's no questions before I move on to the next section.
Everything seems to be clear at this point.
Thank you, Senator. Special considerations. We talked about exempting new vehicles. We know that the group has heard in the past that we should exempt new vehicles. They're safer. They shouldn't have to be inspected annually. Supervisor McKeel pointed out that in Rhode Island, new vehicles are exempt for 2 years or 24,000 miles from the date of purchase. But as a police officer that was monitoring traffic and trying to enforce their inspection requirements, it was almost impossible from the roadside to determine if a vehicle was 2 years old or had reached that 24,000 miles. He said that that led to officers stopping vehicles to check for compliance when they may not have even been in violation. And as we know, sometimes the police contacts with the public can be unpleasant and at times dangerous. This type of roadside contact can be avoided if we just require new vehicles to be inspected at the time of sale and take the guesswork out of compliance. Some new vehicles have defects upon arrival from the factory and others that develop within the first year. The Motor Vehicle Inspection Unit has seen defects on brand new school buses that have caused them to fail inspection. Tom Brown pointed out that during their pre-delivery inspections of brand new vehicles, it is common to discover safety-related defects. He also noted that even if the vehicle passes that pre-delivery inspection, it could become defective after sitting on their lot prior to sale. Sometimes safety components are even damaged or stolen, demonstrating the need for an inspection at the time of the sale. We've heard that newer vehicles have an increasing level of safety systems. So because the newer vehicles are safety, that they don't need to be inspected as frequently or at all. And during some of the research that Supervisor McKeel did, he looked at the advanced safety systems such as the brake assists, forward collision warning systems, autonomous braking, pedestrian detection, adaptive cruise control, on and on and on. For all of those systems to function properly, they have to have the basic components working, which is your brakes and tires and steering and suspension components. Since they rely on those basic systems to function properly, we believe that if you didn't inspect them annually, even though their vehicles are designed to be safer, they're not going to continue to meet those standards. And I'll pause for a second. I see Representative Perry has placed his hand up.
Yes, Representative Perry, go ahead.
Yeah, just real quick on this, because this is one of the things that I disagree with the lieutenant on in the group. You're absolutely right. If they're not inspected, but these safety features could go out the week after you get inspection on the vehicle, just like a week after it's brand new. The new car dealers have to inspect the cars before they leave. So they're looking for defects when they do it. Any of these safety features you could find a week after the year inspections put on it. So I don't think that the number would be so minutely small. I buy new vehicles all the time. My my 2015's first need was 4 years later when I needed tires. And 5 years, I needed to put brakes on it. Those were my first two inspection. I got the tires done because I plow and I wanted newer tires on it, and they would have passed inspection. So it's, I think we've got to put some of this on the user also. So, you know, as far as saying how bad new cars are, I'm kind of surprised Tom Brown would say that as part of the group. So these new cars aren't any good. You know, I think the numbers of defects on new cars are a very, very small number. So, you know, I kind of wanted to mention that on this section, that I think we should do something on new cars. I think that should be something we do. I get the yearly inspection, you know, after that, but the number of people that drive 50 or 100,000 miles a year is a fraction of the average drive. So I don't think it would be necessary to inspect the new cars after the new car dealer inspected it when it came on the lot and before it left. So my opinion.
Thank you, Representative Perry, that opinion. We're going to hear that again, I expect, when we get into this really much. But thank you for bringing that up, and I think you set the tone. Continue, Lieutenant.
Yes, thank you, Representative Perry. Very good points, and we absolutely considered and dug very deep into that. And I'll continue to talk about the new vehicles, but Tom Brown did not point out that new vehicles are junk. I hope that I didn't come across that way. He indicated that even new vehicles can fail inspection, and that is the national average. Vehicles do fail, even brand new ones, and it does increase with time and age, and we know that. But we had to consider all vehicles when we create these laws and create these recommendations, I should say, for law. It's difficult for us to carve out exemptions for vehicles based on mileage and give a break to those that maybe put on lower miles. So overall, these would be our recommendations, but we absolutely considered the fact that new vehicles are safer and have fewer defects than those that age. Let's see. We also agree that newer vehicles crash safer, but the goal of the inspection program is to prevent the crashes in the first place and to reduce the severity of the crashes when they do occur. We will never know the number of crashes that were avoided altogether as a result of Maine's vehicles being safer due to the inspection program. We can conclude, though, with the 29% inspection failure rate, that over 400,000 vehicles a year would be operated on Maine's roads with safety-related defects if they weren't caught during the annual inspection. This number would be greatly exaggerated if the inspection interval was changed to a biennial inspection. It seems logical to conclude that the greater number of defective motor vehicles on the road, the greater number of crashes. We also discussed rental vehicles. Rental vehicles should be subject to the same annual inspection as other passenger cars. We believe that carving out an exemption for rental cars would serve as a convenience to the rental company, but would jeopardize safety. Some rental vehicles are driven harder and rented for heavy-duty use that may cause greater wear and tear on the vehicles. Larry Morrow had also pointed out that Maine is not a major rental car distribution area, so most rental cars in Maine are registered elsewhere anyway. He also owns rental vehicles and strongly believes that they should be inspected annually. He said just because the vehicle is washed and vacuumed between customers doesn't mean that it's properly maintained. He said that rental vehicles fail inspections as often as any other vehicles. And I'll pause for a minute again, Senator Diamond. I saw a hand go up.
Yep, Representative Perry.
Yeah, just me again, real quick on this. Those cars that are registered in other states that don't require inspection aren't required here either, correct?
Say that again, sir. I'm not quite sure I understood the question.
I'll pick a state and it may have an inspection or not. If the car rental companies have Florida plates, and Florida doesn't have an annual inspection or any inspection at all, then when that car comes to Maine, that car can drive around Maine anyway, right?
Correct.
And does this cause rental car companies not to register cars in Maine? So we lose all the revenue from rental car registrations because, like, you know, I don't know exactly how it works on the truck trailers, but we have 10-year registrations for truck trailers. And we don't require those to be inspected here. Is that something that, you know, you guys looked at it all as far as the rent-a-car companies? If it's a fleet type thing or anything like that?
So to answer your question, they don't have to be inspected to operate in Maine, but then you talked about tractor trailers, and trailers do have to be inspected in the state of Maine. They're commercial vehicles and they have to be inspected annually regardless. But of the rental companies, I was only able to talk to a few different representatives, and it's really hard for us to say the total number of vehicles that may be registered in another state to avoid our inspection program. I think that's what you're trying to get to. And we did not get an answer to that. That would be a best guess.
Okay, no, I was just kind of curious. I think we have a bill coming forward that's looking at something to do with registration and rental cars and the requirement for them to bring them back to Maine for an inspection. If they register them here, just makes them not register them here, and not the towns not get the excise tax and the state not get the plate tax. Unlike, the trucks in Mississippi, tractor trailers that we sell 10-year trailers to might not ever come back to Maine. So I was just curious if there was any way to look at that maybe a little different, that we could possibly do something on that idea.
Yeah, thank you for that. I'm not sure that I have a good answer for the group, because I think it'd be a best guess on who's registering in other states. But the point that was made from Larry Morrow, who was representing the rental industry, was that Maine is not a major distribution hub for rental vehicles. So it's a relatively low number to begin with. And to create or carve out an exemption for rental vehicles was merely of a convenience, but it certainly didn't take into consideration safety. And so as a group, our goal would be to ensure that the vehicles were safe, not that we were creating a convenience for the rental companies.
Okay.
Representative White had asked if there were inspection requirements in the manual that don't have a safety nexus. We know that you hear that in front of the committee quite frequently, is that there are rules within the inspection manual that don't have a safety nexus. And so we discussed at length the current inspection rules, and there were only 2 rules that are currently in the inspection manual that don't have a safety nexus. And one of them is the requirement that a technician review the vehicle to make sure that it's properly registered before they perform an inspection. And so it's a checks and balance. We believe it's important, but it's also required, because an inspection technician won't know how to properly inspect a vehicle until they know how it's registered. The registration class determines the type of inspection, but we also want to make sure that the only time somebody's putting a set of eyes on a vehicle in Maine to register it is actually during the inspection. We want to make sure that it's properly registered, and that the VIN numbers aren't from a stolen vehicle, that the numbers haven't been transposed or altered. So in other words, we have an honor system in Maine when you register a vehicle, and the only time that it gets looked at is when you go to an inspection station for the first time somebody puts eyes on it. So we ask that they do that for those 2 reasons. One is to prevent thefts and fraud, and the other one is to determine what class of inspection that it should have at the end of it. The other thing that was brought up was the registration plates themselves. No safety nexus to registration plates. We require that there be a front and a rear. That's what's required of statute. And we do think it's important to have plates on vehicles for recognition, and we don't want people to operate them with anonymity, but that isn't a position that we would say couldn't be changed if the group felt it was important that an inspection technician not require 2 plates, but it is statute. So again, even if we remove certain things from the manual like that don't have a safety nexus, it's still required by law. I'm not sure that it would change anything, but we did discuss those 2 issues. There was nothing else out of the entire 209-page manual that anybody indicated did not have a safety nexus to it. Representative White indicated that he did speak to a lot of his constituents to include repair inspection facilities, and they strongly support the program. We asked the question, is the Maine Motor Vehicle Inspection Program antiquated? And that's based on some of the testimony that's come before you. And we say no. And we just put some bullet points together. There's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes, but in 2003, we did that transition from sworn troopers to civilian inspectors. That greatly enhanced our program and brought a level of expertise to the program that had not existed when troopers were doing it. In 2006, we established a motor vehicle inspection advisory board and rewrote the manual. 2012, we reconvened the advisory board and rewrote the manual again. 2017, online ordering of inspection stickers was created. In 2018, we started doing online inspections online applications for technicians and for stations. In 2019, after listening to the 129th legislature about our complaint process, and they asked us to make it easier and better, we added an online complaint submission process. We think that that's important because everybody wants to use their device nowadays. So they can go online and they can file a complaint, and it will be emailed directly to the supervisor of the inspection program. We also added language to station and technician licenses and procedure charts on how to inquire about either questions, make comments, express concerns. The reason that's important is we require each station to post their licenses and the procedure charts on the walls, making sure that the consumer knows how to get in touch with us and who regulates the program. And then in 2021, we rewrote the manual again after several meetings with the advisory board. So we do feel as though we've advanced over the years, and we've been able to adjust to the changes in the industry. The next piece of the conversation was the fee structure. We really had a pretty lengthy discussion about this. And, it was said that the current rates are pretty low. Larry Morrow said that people don't have a problem paying the $12.50. What they really fear is their vehicle failing an inspection and the actual costs for repair. He believes that the fees need to be saleable. They have to be reasonable. Mike Guay said that stations in other states are amazed that our inspection fee is only $12.50. And he also said that he loses money every time he opens the door in the winter to perform an inspection at that rate. We discussed current fees, technician requirements and their responsibilities, the labor rates, the costs associated with overhead, tools, salary, equipment, and et cetera. It was agreed amongst the practitioners in the group that the average inspection took 30 minutes to complete and approximately 15 more minutes of administrative time for related requirements. They looked at the average labor rate between the working group, and it was $86 per hour. If it takes 45 minutes total for them to perform an inspection, that was the 30 minutes of actually looking at the vehicle and 15 administrative, which included everything from talking to the customer, pointing out the issues and concerns, and filling out the necessary paperwork, the stub sheets, returning the stub sheets to the inspection station and ordering new stickers. Turns into about $64.50 per inspection to break even. So while we agreed that $64.50 seemed like a reasonable rate based on the time that it takes to complete the inspection, we also agree that it's too high. It's not fair to the consumer because this is a compulsory process. It is important to keep the costs low to make sure that people can still afford to get their vehicles inspected. So after a thorough discussion regarding the cost and benefit analysis of the stations that perform state authorized inspections, the group recommended that these fees be increased from somewhere to $25 to $35 per inspection. And that fee would increase the cost of an electronic inspection program that I'll discuss in a minute. The reason we left that open at 25 to 35 is we really feel like that's a range that this committee should consider if there were to be movement in this direction. And we don't know what the exact fee would be right now for an electronic inspection program, although we have had some estimates provided to us over the years that we think it would be relatively low, maybe a couple of dollars per inspection, but that would have to be included within this rate or this fee increase. This increase would bring us in line with the average costs that are seen across the country. And I did note during our studies that 5 states currently have rates that are market driven. Market driven means that essentially they are driven by the market. And so you may pay $45 at one area of the state and $100 in another area of the state. And we were strongly against that, recognizing that Maine has such a vast resources when it comes to inspection stations. There could be 50, 60 miles between stations, and just didn't feel like it was appropriate to allow one station to charge $100 or make everybody drive 2 hours to the next closest inspection station, or an hour, or whatever that case may be. I'll pause for a second on the fees in case there's any questions.
Representative Bruce White.
Yeah, just to clarify, that we agreed that the fee would cover the electronic inspections. Correct, Lieutenant Scott?
Yes, correct. And so the range of 25 to 35 would allow for that. We weren't sure if it was $2 or $3 or $4 by the time we were done for that electronic inspection. So yes, that would include it.
Right, and I think you broke up a little when you were saying that to me. I knew that that's what we intended. I just wanted to make sure the group realizes that, and I know you're going over that next. So thank you.
Thank you, Representative White. Thank you for that. Representative Bryant.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Scott. Remind me again, when was the last time the fee was increased for inspection, Bruce?
I don't have the exact date in front of me. It's been about 20 years. I can find that out, but I think it was over 20 years ago.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, all set.
Thank you. So the final discussion that we had was about electronic inspections. And what we did find was most states do have an electronic inspection program that still have an inspection program. We agreed that the electronic inspections are good for consumer protection, that it would help prevent attempted oversell issues, would provide greater accountability with real-time oversight and regulation. E-inspection programs are a great tool for the inspectors as they're plug and play. The inspection information and vehicle history is well documented. It standardizes the process, reduces human error, and can check for open recalls and access the pertinent sections of the inspection manual when there is a question regarding that process. We believe that a registration-based e-inspection program can reduce fraud by eliminating fake or illegal stickers. The current main inspection sticker is being used as a commodity on the black market and is sold for $100 or more, which is helping to fuel the drug trade. There's actually commercial stickers getting sold for up to $200 a piece. And I think I see a hand that went up, or is it up from before?
Representative White, Bruce White. No, he's all
sorry about that. I didn't. Yeah, I should have had it lowered. Thank you.
He's all set.
Thank you, Senator Diamond. I just happened to look back and catch the hand. We believe eliminating the need for inspection stickers would reduce deception and force more vehicles into compliance, which in turn would improve the overall roadway safety. Sergeant Keaton noted that the State Police Fleet Management has an in-house electronic system for keeping track of the vehicles between his 4 locations, and that an electronic inspection program would replicate that for all inspection stations, creating a centralized cloud-based database for all the inspections in the state of Maine. Mike Guay had pointed out that currently in Maine, the inspection stickers and stub sheets are hand printed and that they're a lot of work. He said it's inconvenient to have to stop in order to inspection stickers, then wait for them to arrive by mail. At times, the stations run out of stickers due to the delays with the current process. He said that he owns a station in New Hampshire that has an electronic inspection program and that it's 10 times easier than Maine's program. The New Hampshire system walks you through the inspection process, prints the inspection stickers, and keeps track of inventory so that you never run out of stickers. And he also indicated that there isn't the additional follow-up paperwork that we require in Maine, where this is a manual process. An e-inspection program would benefit the consumer by reducing fraud and attempting overselling of parts and repairs. The consumer would also receive a copy of the vehicle inspection report. The increase in fees for the inspection can be offset by the reduction in unnecessary repairs or by forcing others into compliance, thereby reducing the number of crashes, ultimately saving all of us money. A centralized database will provide data to our lawmakers to better determine the effectiveness of the program and to allow them to create appropriate laws surrounding the need or lack thereof an inspection program. We also believe this system, when and if interfaced with BMV, could assist in electronic titling. It could help reduce the number of vehicle thefts around the country. This program would eliminate the ability for someone to use a fake or altered VIN number when performing an inspection and subsequent registration. The data is automatically imported into the system when the inspecting technician hooks the computer to the OBD2 port in the vehicle, in the customer's vehicle. So in other words, that VIN number is auto-populated from the vehicle's computer into the e-inspection program and can't be altered afterwards. Once the data is entered in for the first time, it remains in the system and can be retrieved by any other station and also by the Maine State Police. That wraps up the 14 pages of information that we had discussed. There was so much more that we talked about, but these were the important points that I thought were relevant. And I will now pause and wait for any questions or direction from Senator Diamond.
Thank you, Lieutenant. Would you take us off this a little bit so I can see all of my people here? Thank you when you get around to it. And while you're waiting, so the inspection, the electronic inspection is basically, there'll still be a sticker on the window. Is that accurate?
Well, Senator Diamond, there's a couple ways to go about it. My goal, my vision would be to eliminate the inspection sticker altogether and have a registration-based denial, but that obviously requires a stakeholder input with the Bureau of Motor Vehicles and others. But at the end of the day, that would be my preferred method. The second preferred method that we found is they can do printing on demand, which means that a template would be sent from the vendor to the inspecting technician at the time of the inspection so that they could print that template on that special material. So that would work. They would never run out of stickers. As they use that material, the vendor would supply them or resupply them so that they're no longer required to order material. So if we can't come to some type of agreement and do registration-based denial, then we certainly could do print on demand, which would still save a lot of time and eliminate some of the fraud that we're dealing with.
I was just curious, is if we didn't have a sticker on the window, how would law enforcement be alerted that there either was or was not an inspection done?
Yeah, thank you, Senator Diamond. It would be based on the fact that the vehicle is currently registered. So if there was a registration-based denial, you wouldn't be able to register your vehicle if you didn't inspect it.
So no longer passing somebody on the road and saying, oh, that sticker is out of date. That would not be any longer in the.
Correct. It would be based on the registration.
Representative Danny Martin has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Lieutenant Scott. Great presentation, great report. A lot of good questions, a lot of good discussion. Did I miss your recommendations?
Yes, sir. The recommendations were for questions 1, 2, 3, and 4. And so we recommend that the inspection program continue, that it continues with annual inspections, except for the school buses, which are twice a year by a technician and then once by us. Question number 3 was to evaluate the current fees. We recommend the fees be increased from somewhere between $25 to $35. And then we recommend that the state of Maine adopt an electronic inspection program.
Right. Thank you. And you would be prepared to submit draft legislation so we can move forward on this, if that's a desire of the committee?
Yes, sir. If the committee wishes that, I'd be glad to participate.
Thank you very much. Representative Perry. You're on.
Yeah, just real quick on, because you mentioned about the registration, doing it. So if the car's registered, they'd be inspected. I know in Texas, you have to have it inspected before it's registered, but they also have a sticker. So I just don't know how that works.
And so while our recommendation would be to go to electronic inspection program, we would have to work out all of those details should this committee make that determination. The next step for us would be to meet with stakeholders and to iron out all of this. But we believe a registration-based denial would be the best way to move forward.
But is that something that can be done right away? Or should there be an interim thing while that all gets, should there be, put the partial electronic for the stations and the printing of the stickers and stuff, and then a year or 2 or 3 years down the road, move to the other program? Or is it something that you could do right away?
Representative Perry, I believe that we could do it right away. If a decision was made to go to an electronic inspection program and a bill was presented that ended up ultimately passing, I believe that working with our stakeholders, we could come up with electronic inspection program that would do exactly what we're hoping to do within a year or two. But we could phase in certain portions of it if we could not come to consensus.
That may, we'll see what the committee decides. That may be a big bite right off quick, especially with a short session coming up, but we can certainly talk more about that. Representative Bruce White?
Yes, I just want to thank Lieutenant Scott for the great overview and all he did with our committee, chairing that, and the, his department people that he had with him. So we had all the info. It was a pretty aggressive time frame. He pushed out meeting dates, and fortunately, most of us were able to make most of those meetings. We committed to getting it done. And so Lieutenant Scott was tremendous. So thank you on that. And also, I will say, he talked about the Carnegie Mellon study. That's 49 or 47 pages. I kind of wanted him to give an overview of all of that, but I was overruled by our committee to do that. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay.
You should have brought that up, Representative White.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lieutenant. Again, as Representative White and Representative White, thank you and everybody who worked on this. This is really, again, a lot of work, and we really appreciate all of that preparation for what eventually would come, something we'll be working on. But if the committee agrees, we would ask you to, if you wouldn't mind drafting legislation based on your work, and maybe then we can sit down in a work session, or if it's in the bill, we'll hear it. And then we'll go from there. So if you're willing to do that, I think we'd like to have you do that.
Yeah, very, very good, Senator Diamond. I'll start working on that.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're
Any
welcome.
other questions from the committee? Yes, Representative Perry.
Yeah, just real quick, and maybe have the bill come, but like maybe a phased in thing, and then maybe a down the road on the full electronic titling, just a couple things for us to look at and what the best way to go would be on that.
Thank you, Representative Perry.
Thank you. Representative Bruce White? No, you're gone. Okay, very good. Are you on? You got to unmute yourself, Representative White. There you go.
Yep, thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, now we had a bill in. Did we have a carryover bill that was Representative Sebers as well?
Well, we have a bill that's on the highway table. Is that correct, Sam? I think we have one. So we have a bill before us we can use.
Well, we have LD 284 that we could use, couldn't we not?
Right, so that'd be something to think about. I just wanted to throw that out there.
Yep.
If we have to recreate a new bill, or can we just kind of put it
We
in
have
with that?
We have vehicles if that's the way we want to go.
Right. Thank you.
Anything else on this? Again, thank you, Lieutenant. Representative Danny Martin, thank you. Any
No,
comments or questions?
we're good, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Sam, anything that you want us to know and hear?
I'm all set for today.
Very good. So we'll see everybody on Thursday for a work session or work sessions. And we'll be able to wade through this hopefully in a pretty good manner. And then we'll also hear on Thursday the DOT work plan, which I hope, has everybody received that? Anybody who hasn't? Representative Tom Martin, excuse me for not introducing you when you came in. I've seen you here a long time and I never even bothered to say hi, so welcome. Representative Bryant?
Yeah, thank you, Senator. I just want to let you know that Senator Chipman and I on Thursday will be doing the motor vehicle subcommittee on the plates.
Oh.
And at 1 o'clock, 1 to 3.
Okay.
Motor vehicle registration plate group. Just if you need us, I'm sure we could probably come back through. But so I've looked at the work session. I was at the public hearing. I feel comfortable with most likely Andy comes out of committee, but I'll check in later. I just want to throw that out to you that Senator Chipman and I both will be in another committee at the time.
Well, thank you for letting us know that, Representative Bryant. That's and you certainly, when you do get back, hopefully we'll be done by 3. And you'll be able to register your votes with Darlene, so that'll all be good. But thank you for alerting us to that. Appreciate it. Anything else from anybody? Seeing none. Darlene, thank you for everything. We'll see everybody on Thursday afternoon at 1 o'clock. Take care.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Darlene, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Ah,